All right, today we're diving into one of the most perplexing and, frankly, profound ideas from the founder of analytical psychology, Carl Jung. We're going to explore the strange and fascinating link he discovered between the modern science of the mind and the mystical, medieval art of alchemy. Let's get into it.
Now, on the surface, these two things could not be more different, right? On one hand, you have psychology, a modern, clinical, structured science. And on the other, you have alchemy, which we mostly remember as this failed, symbolic, and kind of bizarre medieval pseudoscience obsessed with turning lead into gold. The contrast is just stark.
And that brings us to the central mystery we're tackling today, a mystery that drove decades of Jung's most important work. Why on earth would a brilliant scientific pioneer of the mind become so utterly fascinated with the obscure, smoke-filled world of alchemy? The answer, as we'll see, reveals his entire map of the human soul. So to solve this puzzle, you have to understand that Jung's interest here wasn't just some casual hobby. No, he saw alchemy as the key, the absolute key to a massive psychological problem he was running into again and again in his own clinical work.
You see, for Jung, the psyche wasn't some simple machine you could just fix. It was a vast, mysterious, and often incredibly dark territory. He realized pretty quickly that the rational, scientific tools of his time just weren't enough to map this inner world. He needed older maps, more symbolic maps, and he found them in the strange, cryptic drawings of the alchemists.
And this individual psychological problem, Jung believed, was actually a symptom of something much, much bigger. A deep spiritual crisis in the Western world, one that had left the individual soul feeling dangerously empty. And right here, Jung makes this incredibly powerful diagnosis. He argued that for centuries, Western religion had put everything important, all the divinity, all the meaning, in external figures and beliefs. It's all out there, in the church, in the Bible, in a historical figure, but it was never really experienced in here, inside the individual person. And the consequence of pushing everything outside of ourselves is huge. Think about it. If the ultimate good, God, and the ultimate evil, sin, are both external things, then what's left for our inner world? It gets stripped of its value, its meaning. The soul becomes this devalued space, something you dismiss as just psychology, instead of the vessel of the divine. And when you compare this to Eastern traditions, wow, it's just night and day. In many Eastern philosophies, the divine isn't out there, it's found within the person, in the concept of Atman, the true innermost self. But in the West external model, the value of the individual's inner life just plummets. And this, Jung said, is the deep psychological wound that alchemy was unconsciously trying to heal. So this brings us to Jung's incredible discovery. He started to see alchemy as the missing piece of the puzzle. It was this hidden underground stream in Western thought that wasn't obsessed with external salvation, but with creating a kind of divine substance from within. Jung realized the alchemists weren't just a bunch of fools trying to make physical gold. Their bizarre experiments, all the bubbling potions and cryptic symbols, were actually a projection of an inner psychological process. They were unconsciously trying to do the work inside themselves that they felt was missing in the world outside, the incredibly difficult work of uniting opposites. And the ultimate goal of all this alchemical work, in Jung's language, was the realization of the self. And we have to be clear, this isn't the ego, not the I we think of every day. No, this is the self, the archetype of true wholeness. It's this paradoxical, almost unthinkable state where all the warring parts of your psyche, the light and the dark, the good and the evil, the masculine and the feminine, are finally brought together into one unified whole. But, and this is a huge but, this journey is anything but simple. Jung loved to quote the alchemists, who called it the longissima via, the longest way. It is not some straight path to becoming a better person. It's a terrifying snake-like descent into the chaos of your own nature to find the hidden unity within all that mess. The alchemists actually mapped this journey through these incredibly potent symbolic stages. As you can see, it all starts in darkness, the nigredo, with a brutal encounter with your own shadow. Then it moves through this period of intense inner conflict, before hopefully culminating in what they call the sacred wedding of opposites. And what comes out of that? The legendary philosopher's stone, which for Jung was just a symbol for the whole integrated and incorruptible self. So, the big question is, Why was this weird alchemical path so necessary? Well, as Jung saw it, it was because alchemy directly addressed a fundamental tension that the dominant Western worldview had left completely unresolved.
Okay, this slide is absolutely crucial. Christianity, at least in its dogmatic form, frames the world as this open war between good and evil. Its central symbol is the Trinity, the number 3, which is seen as masculine, spiritual, and perfect. But alchemy? It's not about choosing good over evil. It's about the terrifying task of uniting them. And its central symbol isn't 3, but 4, the quaternity. It adds a fourth element to the equation, the feminine, the earthly, the body, the dark stuff.
This whole idea is perfectly captured in one of alchemy's oldest and most mysterious sayings, the axiom of Maria Prophetessa. This little phrase was a guiding light for alchemists for something like 1,700 years. It describes a process that has to move beyond the 3 to find its true completion in the 4th.
So what's the secret code here? Well, the alchemists intuited that the spiritual masculine trinity felt incomplete. They were searching for the 4th element, a principle that represents everything that the pure spirituality of the Trinity seemed to leave out: the feminine, the physical body, the earth itself, and all the dark, unconscious parts of our own minds. That was the missing piece. And this reveals alchemy's ultimate purpose. It wasn't an anti-Christian movement trying to tear things down. Jung saw it as a compensatory one. It was trying to create what he called a chthonic or earthly counterpart to the purely spiritual Christ. It was looking for a new symbol that could finally heal the catastrophic split between spirit and nature, between our conscious minds and our own shadow. In the end, Jung showed us that the alchemists' great work, their magnum opus, it was never really about chemistry. It was a symbolic roadmap for the most difficult journey any of us can ever undertake: the transformation of our own chaotic, leaden psyche into an integrated golden self. Which, of course, leaves us with a final, very personal question. What's the lead in your own life that is still waiting to be transformed?